has said that these oil deals that you've done with foreign companies are basically illegal.
We have independent opinion and we have the Constitution, and if it is illegal, we will be the first to tear up these contracts. I have no problem. We are not mismanaging it. We're doing the best contracts you actually sign in history.
These oil deals aren't only political dynamite. They're dogged by accusations of corruption because they're not open and above board.
Well, these Kurdish oil deals are about as transparent as a pool of this black stuff. The Kurdish people don't know, even the Kurdish parliament hasn't been told. It's just a tight circle of the ruling elite who know who gets what and the fees involved.
The Hunt oil deal in Kurdistan has got Congress asking questions again.
I'm very concerned about it because Mr. Hunt from Hunt Oil was on the advisory committee appointed by President Bush to look at what's happening with Iraq, and suddenly he makes a contract with the Kurds. I'm troubled why Mr. Hunt would have been involved in this when he had a different responsibility that looks to me like a conflict of interest.
Mr. Hunt has said his ties to the Bush family and the Republicans didn't help Hunt Oil to strike the deal in Kurdistan.
And soon America will have a real choice. State-of-the-art technology, innovative business methods.
Sheer corruption.
Great. Tilt-away steering wheel.
George Bush has only 6 months left to run. Only his staunchest supporters would deny his legacy's been tainted by the failure to rebuild Iraq. While he remains in place, so will those gagging orders on 70 whistleblower cases. They could reveal even more embarrassing details about what happened to the money. So what does Mr. Bush's administration have to say about all of this?
We asked the White House for an interview, but they refused. And the Pentagon. And the Justice Department. What about concrete results? How many people have gone to jail as a result of your audits, your investigations and subsequent action?
5 are in prison now as a result of our investigations. We have 50 ongoing investigations.
5 years on, no major private contractor has had to face court for fraud, for mismanagement of substantial amounts of money in Iraq.
No, we haven't taken a contractor to court. We do have a suspension and debarment process that holds them accountable.
But shouldn't some of these people actually be facing court for what they've done, facing trial for embezzlement, effectively?
And if we can develop the evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt that embezzlement and fraud occurred, then we will do that.
So did the poster boys, Scott Custer and Mike Battles, caught with the evidence of their fraud, end up in jail? Well, they were debarred from military contracts, but they're not behind bars. Instead, they retired to Florida. Scott Custer still lives here in a $1 million house on a private estate. The pair turned down the chance for a chat with me, but their lawyer told us that Mike and Scott had very little direct supervision over the operations of their company in Iraq. And what about our whistleblowers? Bob Isaacson had his day in court to see a jury fine Custer Battles $10 million. A judge later suspended the case on a technicality, but it's not over yet.
To come out of this war and not prosecute those that are stealing, while the British soldiers and the American soldiers primarily and the other coalition soldiers are dying and being maimed every day, is the most disgraceful thing I could ever think of.
What about Bunny Greenhouse? Well, after she objected to that Halliburton contract, she was demoted for what the Army said was her poor work performance. Meanwhile, one of Bunny's old colleagues at the Pentagon moved on to a top job with Halliburton.
That's the way they saw me, as a troublemaker, as a skunk at the picnic. But it was absolutely the most blatant disregard, you know, for the federal procurement law and the process that I had ever seen in all of the years that I'd worked in government contracting.
What happened to Sanger and Zirak, who got shot in Kurdistan? Erinnis had told us they would have been prepared to offer compensation, but the victims had never been in touch. Then suddenly there was an interesting development. 7 months after the incident, and after we contacted Erinnis, they did send someone to meet the victims and discuss what could be done. Nothing has yet been agreed. Reggie Lane, the KBR trucker, will be in a care home for the rest of his days. The company offered Linda a Freedom Medal and a $25,000 payment, dependent on signing a legal waiver. She refused and is suing KBR.
I've never seen anybody come in here to see how he's doing, you know, from KBR. To say, hey Reggie, what do you need? How are you doing? There are no words that can describe what I've been through with the man I love.
KBR split from Halliburton, and they've just won part of another big army contract in Iraq, worth $50 billion. KBR declined our request for an interview. The British government awarded a contract to supply our troops in Iraq as well. It went to KBR. Alan Grayson, the whistleblower's lawyer, will be fighting his war for many years to come.
Some would say you've stood for Congress as a Democrat. You have a political axe to grind, and that's why you attack the Bush administration over this question of contract fraud.
I think that if anybody, any human being, knew what I know about the war in Iraq, they would feel the same way about the war in Iraq as I do. The only people who have actually benefited from the war in Iraq are the Iranians, Al-Qaeda, and Halliburton.
And when people look back on the Iraq war and the reconstruction effort and they say war profiteering, that's what it was about, the privatization of a war, what do you think?
I don't agree. I don't see an agenda that overarched this process, which you would have to assume in order to reach that conclusion. The outcomes there, as everyone knows, have been mixed, but it's taken a while and it's been a tough process.
The Iraqi people don't have electricity, even in Baghdad, most of the time. They don't have safe drinking water. But the money that's gone into waste, fraud, and abuse under these contracts is just so outrageous. It's so egregious. It may well turn out to be the largest war profiteering in history.
US and Iraqi government agencies have come up with a series of figures for what's been stolen, what's missing, and not properly accounted for. We've pieced them together.
That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April and shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that tune.
Coming up here on BBC One, the return of negative equity as the Bank of England warns of more turmoil ahead. And why did the billionaire Donald Trump fly into Aberdeen today? Join us at 10.
And in Imagine at 10:35, the iconic photography of Annie Leibovitz.
But